A kind-hearted single mother gives food to a homeless man on a cold winter night, unaware that he's a billionaire in disguise. What happens next changes her life forever. But why is this billionaire hiding his true identity? Welcome to our video. My name is Mark, and I'm so excited to share this heartwarming and unexpected story with you today. But before we dive in, tell me, where are you watching this from? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoy stories full of twists, emotions, and inspiration, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and tap the bell icon so you never miss another video. Now, let's jump into the story. The wind howled through the narrow streets of Brookhaven as Emma pulled her coat tighter around her shoulders. The grocery bag in her hand felt heavier than usual, not because of the contents, but because of the long day she'd endured. Her son, Ethan, skipped alongside her, his small boots splashing through puddles as the first snowflakes began to fall. "Mom," Ethan said, tugging at her sleeve, "look over there." Emma turned to see a man sitting on the corner, hunched over with a thin, ragged blanket draped over his shoulders. His beard was unkempt, and his hands trembled as he held a cardboard sign that read, "Hungry and cold. Please help." Emma's heart clenched. She knew what it felt like to struggle, to wonder if there'd be enough food on the table or enough money to keep the heat on. She glanced down at Ethan, whose wide eyes were filled with concern. "Mom, we have to help him," Ethan whispered. Emma hesitated. She wasn't sure she could spare anything, but the thought of walking away felt wrong. Taking a deep breath, she crouched down beside the man. "Here," she said, pulling out a sandwich she'd bought for herself. "It's not much, but I hope it helps." The man looked up, his eyes glassy with tears. "Thank you," he murmured. "You have no idea how much this means." As Emma walked away, the man watched her, his expression unreadable. Ethan looked back over his shoulder and waved. The man reached into his pocket and pulled out an old, cracked phone. Dialing a number, he whispered into the receiver, "I found her." The sun rose over Brookhaven, casting a soft golden glow on the quiet streets. Emma was already at the diner, wiping down tables before the morning rush began. She was exhausted but determined to make it through the day. Every dollar she earned brought her closer to paying off the bills that seemed to pile up endlessly. As the bell above the diner's door jingled, Emma looked up to greet the first customer. But instead of a customer, she saw the same man she'd helped the night before. He stood outside the window, staring in with an expression that was equal parts gratitude and curiosity. Emma's heart skipped a beat. She wasn't sure why he was here, but something about the way he looked at her made her uneasy. Gathering her courage, she stepped outside. "Hi," she said, keeping her voice calm and steady. "Is everything okay?" The man gave her a warm smile. "I just wanted to thank you again," he said, his voice softer than she remembered. He held out a crumpled piece of paper. "This is for you." Emma hesitated before taking the note. When she opened it later, her breath caught. The words scrawled on the paper were simple but puzzling. "Your kindness will be rewarded." That evening, as Emma and Ethan returned home, she noticed an envelope on the doorstep. Inside was a stack of crisp bills, $500 in total. There was no note, no explanation, just the money. "Mom," Ethan said excitedly, "where did it come from?" "I don't know," Emma whispered, her mind racing. "Maybe it's a mistake." The next morning, as Emma prepared to leave for work, a sleek black car pulled up outside her home. A well-dressed man stepped out and approached her door. "Are you Emma?" he asked, his tone formal but kind. Emma stood frozen at the door, clutching Ethan's backpack tightly in her hands. The well-dressed man in front of her had a presence that seemed out of place in their humble neighborhood. His suit was perfectly tailored, and his polished shoes gleamed even in the dull morning light. "Yes, I'm Emma," she replied cautiously. "Can I help you?" The man offered a polite smile and extended a business card. "My name is Charles. I work for a client who would like to meet you." Emma frowned, glancing down at the card. It was plain white, with only a name and an address written in elegant gold lettering. No company name, no phone number, nothing else. "Who's your client?" Emma asked, her voice tinged with suspicion. "I'm afraid I can't reveal much," Charles replied, his tone calm and measured. "But I assure you, it's in your best interest to meet them. They were deeply moved by your act of kindness." Emma hesitated. She had no idea what this was about or who this mysterious client could be, but something about the situation felt surreal. She was just a struggling single mom. Why would anyone important want to meet her? "I'm sorry, but I don't think I can." Charles raised a hand, cutting her off gently. "You're under no obligation, of course. But if you choose to come, transportation will be provided, and your son is welcome to join." Emma glanced at Ethan, who was tugging at her sleeve. "Mom, let's go. Maybe it's an adventure." She sighed, weighing her options. Against her better judgment, curiosity got the better of her. "All right," Emma said finally. "When?" "This evening," Charles replied, bowing slightly. "I'll send a car to pick you up at 6. Please be ready." As he walked away, Emma felt a strange mix of anxiety and intrigue. Who was this client, and what could they possibly want with her? Later that evening, as the sleek black car pulled up in front of her house, Emma noticed a small emblem on the car door, a crest she couldn't recognize. The driver stepped out and opened the door for her, saying, "Welcome, ma'am. You're about to meet someone who could change your life." Emma sat nervously in the luxurious car, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Ethan, however, was enthralled, his eyes darting around the interior, marveling at the smooth leather seats and the glowing panel of buttons. "Mom, this is like a spaceship," he whispered excitedly. Emma managed a weak smile, but her mind raced with questions. The car glided smoothly through the streets of Brookhaven before heading toward a more affluent part of town. Mansions lined the road, their gates ornate and imposing. Eventually, they stopped in front of a grand estate, its massive iron gates swinging open as if by magic. As they stepped out, Charles appeared again, waiting by the main entrance. "This way, please," he said, leading them inside. The house was breathtaking, crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings, and every surface gleamed. Emma couldn't help but feel out of place. She clutched Ethan's hand tightly as they followed Charles into a large sitting room. There, seated in an armchair by the fireplace, was the man Emma had given food to just days ago. He looked entirely different now. His beard was neatly trimmed, and he wore a tailored suit that fit him perfectly. He rose as they entered, his eyes kind and warm. "Emma," he said, his voice steady, "thank you for coming." Emma blinked in disbelief. "It's you, but how?" He smiled, gesturing for her to sit. "My name is Richard. I owe you an explanation." Emma hesitated before sitting down, Ethan settling on the seat beside her. "I don't understand," she said. "Why all this?" Richard leaned forward. "A few years ago, I lost everything. My family, my purpose. I've spent months wandering, trying to find meaning again. When you stopped to help me, you didn't just give me food. You reminded me of something I'd forgotten, human kindness." Emma felt her throat tighten. "I only did what anyone should," she said softly. Richard shook his head. "Not everyone does. Your gesture meant more than you could know. And now, I want to repay that kindness." Richard stood, pulling a small envelope from his pocket. "This," he said, handing it to Emma, "is the first step. But there's more I'd like to offer, if you're willing to trust me." Emma stared at the envelope, her heart pounding. What could it possibly contain? Emma's fingers trembled as she opened the envelope. Inside was a single piece of paper, folded neatly. She unfolded it and gasped, her eyes widening in disbelief. It was a check, made out to her, for $100,000. I can't accept this," Emma stammered, shaking her head. "This is too much." Richard smiled gently. "Emma, this is just the beginning. It's not charity, it's an investment in someone who has a kind heart and the strength to help others. I've seen people with wealth, but not many have what you do, genuine compassion." Emma's mind reeled. The money could solve so many problems, her overdue bills, Ethan's education, and even her dream of opening her own bakery. But she couldn't shake the feeling that there had to be a catch. "What do you want from me?" she asked hesitantly. "Nothing that goes against who you are," Richard said, his tone earnest. "All I ask is that you use this to build a better life for yourself and your son. And when you're ready, I'd like you to be part of a project I'm working on, helping others who've been in situations like mine." Ethan tugged at Emma's sleeve. "Mom, he's right. You always say we should help people if we can." Emma looked at her son, then back at Richard. "Why me? Out of everyone you could have chosen, why did you come back to us?" Richard leaned back, his eyes thoughtful. "Because when I had nothing, you treated me like I mattered. That's rare. People like you can make a difference in the world." As Emma sat there, her thoughts a whirlwind, Charles entered the room with a briefcase. "Sir, shall we proceed?" he asked Richard. Richard turned to Emma with a smile. "Before you decide, let me show you something. It might help you understand what's possible." Richard gestured for Emma and Ethan to follow him. As they walked through the grand estate, he began to speak, his voice calm yet filled with conviction. "I call it the Haven Initiative," Richard said. "It's a network of shelters, support centers, and training programs for people who've hit rock bottom, just like I did. But it's more than just offering food or a place to stay. It's about restoring dignity, providing skills, and creating opportunities for them to rebuild their lives. Emma listened intently, her curiosity growing. They stopped in front of a large set of double doors. Richard opened them to reveal a massive conference room with screens displaying maps, charts, and images of smiling faces. People who looked like they'd found hope again. Here's what we've accomplished so far, Richard continued. In the past year alone, we've helped over 1,000 individuals find jobs, reconnect with their families, or start businesses. The funding comes from partnerships, donors, and my personal investments. But it's the stories of transformation that drive this mission. Emma was overwhelmed. This is incredible, she murmured. But where do I fit into all of this? Richard turned to her, his eyes sincere. You've already done the hardest part, showing compassion when it wasn't expected. I want you to help lead a new chapter of this initiative. Your story will inspire others. You'll oversee a community outreach program in Brookhaven, helping people like you helped me. Emma felt a mixture of fear and excitement. I've never done anything like this before, she said honestly. Neither had I when I started, Richard replied with a reassuring smile. But you'll have guidance, resources, and a team to support you. All I need is your commitment and your heart. Ethan tugged on Emma's sleeve. Mom, this is amazing. You always wanted to help people more. Emma smiled at her son, her heart swelling with pride and determination. Okay, she said, turning back to Richard. I'm in. Richard's face lit up, but before the moment could fully sink in, Charles stepped forward with a folder. There's one more thing, he said, placing it on the table. Emma opened the folder to find plans for a community center in Brookhaven. Her name was already listed as the director. We've been preparing this for months, Richard said. I hoped you'd agree, but I wanted you to make the choice yourself. The center is funded, the permits are approved, and construction can begin next week. All it needs is your leadership. As Emma processed this life-altering opportunity, Richard handed her a key. This is for the cottage on the estate. You and Ethan can move in today. Consider it a fresh start for everything you're about to build. Emma stared at the key, her emotions swirling. Could she step into this new life and make a difference, or was it too much for her to handle? Emma stood on the doorstep of the grand cottage, the keys still warm in her hand. Ethan was already running around in the garden, laughing as he explored the new space. It was surreal. Only a few days ago, she had been struggling to make ends meet, and now, here she was, holding the key to a new chapter of her life. Richard's promise had been more than just financial support, it was an opportunity to change lives. As Emma entered the cottage, she felt a sense of peace wash over her. The place was small but cozy, with large windows that let in the light. It felt like home, but more importantly, it felt like the beginning of something she had always hoped for. Days turned into weeks, and Emma began her work with the Haven Initiative. At first, it was overwhelming. She had no idea how to run a program on such a large scale, but Richard's team was always there to guide her. They offered training, advice, and constant encouragement. Slowly, Emma found her stride. She started with small community events, reaching out to the people in Brookhaven who needed help the most. She organized food drives, job placement workshops, and support groups for single parents, anything that could make a difference in their lives. With each success, Emma felt more confident, and with each person she helped, her heart grew fuller. One afternoon, as Emma sat at her desk reviewing applications for the next workshop, she received a message from Richard. We've just secured a major partnership, it read. Things are about to get even bigger. Emma smiled, knowing that this was only the beginning. She had come a long way since that fateful day when she had given food to a homeless man. She had found her purpose, and now, she was helping others find theirs. As Ethan ran into the room, holding a drawing he had made, Emma felt a warmth in her chest. The picture was simple, just a small family, a house, and a big sun shining above. I drew us, Mom, Ethan said proudly. Emma knelt beside him, her heart swelling with love. It's beautiful, baby. And in that moment, Emma realized that it wasn't just the money or the success that had changed her life. It was the simple act of kindness that had opened the door to everything else. She had learned that sometimes, the smallest gestures could have the biggest impact, and the greatest rewards came not from wealth or status, but from the connections we make and the lives we touch. As Emma looked out the window at the setting sun, she felt a deep sense of gratitude. Life had given her a second chance, and she was determined to make the most of it, not just for herself, but for others. The journey ahead was long, but she was ready to face it with the same kindness and courage that had brought her here. After all, a single act of kindness had changed her life, and it could change the world.